Another key fundamentals to React is props and state. Now for this lecture, we're going to be looking at props. Then in the next lecture, we're going to look at state. Alright, so but before we look at that, I want to look at how to create another component, because currently we have just one component called custom. So let's say we want to have one called input field. So let's create a component called input field. And there are different ways to create components. If you want, you can use a class-based component, but I'm still going to stick with functional component. But this time I'm going to change it up to an arrow function. So you just say const input field is equal to this, and we just export default input field. And over here we just return our basic input field with a type of text, and we'll give a placeholder of type here. Now nothing, right? Of course, because we just created the component, but we are not actually using it. So let's use it in our custom component. First of all, you need to import your component, so this file is aware of the component. So let's import input field from our components folder in a file called input field. So let's just put it down here. So you just call it as if you are writing your basic HTML tag. So save that, and you can see we have our input field right here. Okay, cool. So now let's look at the thing with props. If we head back to our input field, you can see we have type, right? We have placeholder. Now this is a default attribute for HTML tags. Now you are not limited to that, because your own custom component now could have those attributes. Now you can say type, right? Type is equal to text right here, because this input field doesn't know that there's something called type is equal to text, right? So we need to make sure that this our own input field is aware of such attributes. So that is where props comes to play. So props is like attributes, but for your own custom attributes, for your own custom components, if I'm to put it that way. So the H1 has an attribute of inner text. It has an attribute of inner HTML. It has an attribute of style. It has an attribute of, you get a point, it has an attribute of class. So how do we make our own input field have an attribute of text? So let's say we have a dynamic input field, right? I guess that's the whole point of creating a React component, to make it dynamic. Let's say by default this is a type of text, right? What if we want this to be a type of number? That means we will have to now create another input field for number. No, that doesn't make sense, right? It doesn't actually gear towards the concept of don't repeat yourself. So let's say we want to make this input field really, really dynamic by the type of type it's received. I don't know why I say type of type, but let's just write like that. So we have type, and let's say I want this type to be of type number. Save that. I expect this to be of type number, right? No, it's not working. Why is it not working? So we pass this as a prop, but now this input field is not aware that it's supposed to use that as a prop. So for us to do that now, we need to say, okay, we want to accept props. So we accept props. Okay, so we've accepted props. So now what's going on? So we need to make sure that this type is either going to be whatever is passed in, or of type text. So remember, now we're passing a prop of what? Type. So how do we do that? So since if it's of type, you're passing something called type, that means it's going to be an objective pushed along to our props. So now we can say props dot type or text. So if nothing is passed in, so I'm just going to get rid of that right now. Save that, and also save this one. Come back, and you can see we still have, our normal type of text, because we didn't pass in any props, right? Any props of text. So let's undo that, and let's pass it number. So once we save this now, automatically this is of type number. So you can see the fun of this now. We can be able to create dynamic input field. So we will leave this one as type of text. We can say this one is going to be a date, and we can say this one is going to be a type of telephone. And you can see we have dynamic input fields. You see the cool thing about React. So you can just create one component, and based on the prop you pass it, that you've made it totally dynamic. All right. So this is really cool. You can also choose to pass in the value if you want to pass a default value, but we're going to look at that in the next lecture when we cover things called states. All right, so let's keep the ball rolling, and I'll see you in the next lecture.